Ryan.
Hello, Bella. How are you today?
I'm alive.
Life's good. Yeah.
I'm I'm living. That's my new answer for everything is I'm living. My pulse, it is beating.
The conditions of life at its bare minimum are being met.
Yes, that is how I am. Thank you for asking. Hello everyone. Welcome to episode 2 on season 2, which is crazy. And I know that I'm excited about today because I want to talk about different philosophies of practice. I know, like in season 1, we chatted about different ways of working with the infernal divine, or just working with the divine, period. I gave you 6 different ways, technically a seventh way if you decide to create your own. But when it comes to the philosophy of practicing, I wanted to explain that there are like academic ways and practical ways of looking at a practice, and I've broken it down into 4 different categories, which is a revivalist, a revisionist, a traditionalist, and a non-traditional nonconformist. And so we're gonna go over those, and hopefully this will help you. I know there's a lot of nuances in between them, but and they do kind of overlap in different ways, but I think maybe it's my neurodivergence. I'm not really sure, but this is really helpful for me. Do you know what I
I think
mean?
so. Like I said, I think when you first mentioned it, I think the concept just kind of helps maybe create the conversation. And then, like, amongst ourselves, I think it helps us maybe kind of express our point of view with having some things like this to work with. They're not all encompassing. They don't have to be. They're just terminology that maybe helps, kind of navigate it. And like I said, when we're sharing amongst ourselves or our peers, it kind of gives maybe a starting point of I'm a nonconformist, non-traditional, so that way maybe somebody kind of understands a little bit more what my point of view is when I'm explaining my UPG and stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And just so everyone knows, UPG, we've said it before, but we'll say it every time we say it, just for new listeners. It means unverified personal gnosis. And our UPG is not fact, and it is never something that we're trying to force you to believe. Everything we say on this podcast, everything that we share is just from our perspective, from our own practices, and we are just here sharing it with you, hoping that it helps. And sometimes you'll get what's called SPG, which is shared personal gnosis, and that just feels really good to have some of that external validation.
Exactly. And hopefully maybe you find a little bit for yourself here as well.
Yeah, exactly. We You might hear me and Ryan cough periodically because we are still sick. And I'm not gonna make him edit every single cough out. Excuse me. But also this is the first time we're recording the podcast live. Um, that sounds weird. Wait. Video.
Video.
Yeah, we always record live, but we're recording the video of the podcast. So if you're listening to this, it's on a Saturday or maybe, I don't know, Sunday, Monday, whatever you listen to this. You can expect to see the podcast typically on Wednesdays after the podcast has come out. So that way you can watch us see sort of a more unedited, just me and Ryan hanging out on Wednesdays on YouTube. So that's fun.
Yeah. Having
That's,
lunch.
yeah. Sometimes we might actually have lunch. Um,
Actually, I did have some visions down the future road of like cooking lunch together.
Oh, I
I
would
would
love
love that.
that. That's a great idea. I'll just get like I have to my stupid microphone, the one that like I can put on my shirt, the little like lavalier. I can't find it, and I don't know. I used it that one time I was sick. I used it when we were recording the podcast because I did it from bed.
Yeah,
I couldn't bring this thing, so I don't know what I did with it. It's
of
missing.
course.
Yeah, it's weird. All right. So, revivalist. I'm gonna read what I wrote, and then me and Ryan are gonna wax poetic. So, what I wrote about this is it's a reanimation of past traditions. So, if you are someone that identifies as a revivalist, in your practice, you would seek to resurrect something or revive it. And that can be historical systems or whatnot, but you would want to keep it as close to the original as possible, really acknowledging how it once existed. And you would have a heavy reliance on the primary source or the origin source of text, or whatever, inscriptions, archaeology, folklore, whatever. You would want to stick to that. Uh, and there would be like an emphasis on accuracy. So if someone is a revivalist, you'll notice that there's like an emphasis that like we're bringing it back and it is accurate to its origin source or historical continuity and fidelity. It would be the yeah. Do you get what I'm saying? That okay. So I think that makes sense. Okay, and then when you're reconstructing it by necessity, you would then be filling in the gaps because historically there's always going to be gaps. And you would do that very carefully and also very conservatively. So you would not fill in the gaps with something that's like completely asinine in comparison to the origin text. You would want to stay as close to that origin text as possible. It's because the authority in the matter when you are a revivalist is not on you. The authority now transfers to the lineage or the origin source. So your goal here would be to preserve cultural memory and to prevent dilution of the origin texts at all, and also to prevent modern day projection onto the origin text. And I would say at this point, if you're a revivalist, the only real limitations that you would run into is that it might feel very rigid at times, and inaccessible to other people that don't know what you know. And also, to me, it's very presumptuous. And there's a lot of um, assuming within that because the origin texts are going to be lacking. And so just because something is original by nature does not make it accurate. Um, yeah. So that is a revivalist perspective. And so if you have like that philosophical perspective moving into your practice, or you know someone who does, or you're on TikTok and you're watching someone's video and they are just like, and you're like, why are they so like ornery about this? It's like, why are they so angry about the origin text being modernized? It's because they're probably a revivalist to some degree and they don't want to lose that. So I think it's really important for us to know and understand these philosophies because it affects how you practice. And it
Yeah,
also affects
definitely.
how you compare yourself to other people because my God, the land of comparison.
But that's also where I think this conversation is helpful, though, is when
Yeah.
we are, like I said, like you said, watching somebody on TikTok or listening to somebody else. It, I think, helps give a bit of context to where they're coming from, where you come from, and where that actually meets in some kind of discussion to
Yes.
kind of set some framework for yourself as to
And
why maybe that would be that way or the
yes.
way it is for you.
Yes. And boundaries.
Yeah, exactly.
Because someone practicing that way does not make them wrong. It makes them a revivalist.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I think is nice about this. And it's a much better context of like that's just the way they practice. But
Yes.
I have a contextualization of what that practice is for myself mentally so that I understand it as opposed to trying to assign this right, wrong, or you know, I just don't deal with that sort of situation. And that's why I
Yeah.
think it's also helpful to add this.
Yeah. Or just like immediately trying to get them to see your perspective. Your perspective is going to fall under one of these categories. And just because someone is a revivalist doesn't mean that they don't know or understand your perspective. On top of that, you can be a revivalist and a non-traditional conformist at the same time in different ways. You just may take like revivalism only 5%. You know what I mean? So we can adopt all of these in some way. So keep that in mind. Like you may fall, this is a spectrum, and you may fall somewhere on that spectrum.
And I think it wanes and changes as you grow and change within your practice as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just think it's interesting. Like, I think revivalism is cool because it's like I understand like your heart is really in preserving that original text. But at the same time, like I am absolutely not fully a revivalist, so I have a lot to say about it. Maybe I should save that for the end.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll go through the list and then we'll kind of go back and commentary and share a little bit on each of them. So maybe
I
that
think
way we
that's
have the foundation so that people understand the four groups as we discuss, because we'll
yeah.
kind of talk about how they mesh or don't mesh or those kind of things.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about a revisionist. Okay. So a revisionist, their goal here is to reevaluate. Reevaluation, okay? And reinterpretation. So a revisionist practice intentionally re-examines tradition through entirely new lenses. Historically, culturally, ethically, experimentally, you just fucking rip it apart and you want to look at it through a bunch of new lenses. Um, it, it, what someone would do as a revisionist, they're going to engage with the origin text, but then they're going to question their context and they're going to question everything about it. And then they're actively, that's their intention. Okay. So a revisionist intention is to actively dismantle it, dismantle uh, distortions within it. So whether it's religious dogma, colonialism, fucking patriarchal or political, or if there's anything in it that could be connected to something else. Like well, guys, we know this. We know the truth. Bella, me, I'm a revisionist. We know this, right? Like, do we know this?
I don't think
Um,
it's a secret to me, but I don't know about everybody else.
it's I'm a serious revisionist. So, for instance, like for me, even witchcraft, like I will rip that shit to shreds because I'm like, where does it come from? Why was there persecution? What was happening politically, socially, mentally? What was what was the point? Like, what is the point? Where did the actual magic side come from? So, okay, not that I'm defending revivalism, okay? I mean, not revivalist, sorry, revisionist. Not that I'm defending it, but we need to know that I'm biased as fuck here, okay? Because it's how I practice. Okay, anyway. So, yes, so we will dismantle actively and intentionally, we'll dismantle any distortions that may actually still be affected by the practice being traditional. Um, so if a practice now if you were to so say you were to practice in the 1300s and it was great, but then that practice now ends up being like patriarchal and it ends up being something that like dismantles my sovereignty as a woman, then I am not going to be practicing that traditionally. I'm going to tear it apart. Um, so the goal is to reframe, and we will reframe deities, spirits, um, practices, rituals, rites. We'll reframe it all. We don't care. And it's because we want it to better reflect um, what's happening now versus its origin or origin, like the nuances of the origin text. The authority comes from analysis. So I talk about authority. I'm going to talk about authority on each of these. I think that's really important because We are talking about sovereignty so much when you do work with the infernal divine, which means we're talking about authority. And if you want to know what the word sovereignty means, it just means that you are sovereign over something. In other words, you are the authority. So when you lead with a philosophy in any practice, you have to decide where the authority lies in that philosophy. I love philosophy. I thought about becoming a philosophy professor actually, and I did not pursue that route, but I'm still young. Um, I'm not going to. Honestly, if I go back to school, it's for something that I'll talk about later. But yeah, so the goal here, the authority here is critical analysis, whereas the authority in revivalism is in preservation of original text or lineage or antiquity. Okay. So if you're a revisionist, it's an analysis, it's also in lived experience. It's based off of your own lived experience. So some of the strengths here or the things here that could be beneficial to you as a revivalist. Oh my gosh, why do I keep messing these up? Revisionist. I'm so sorry. As
Okay,
a
they're new terms that we're
revisionist.
using, so of
Yes.
course it'll
Well,
be
they're
like
also
that.
really like similar.
Similar.
I should have
Yeah, it
probably done one at the end and one at the beginning. Um, is that to me, the strengths here is that it can correct misinformation from the origin text. It also can correct biases. It also allows tradition to be living, breathing, evolving. And it also, in my opinion, it can bridge a gap between academic and scholarship with more of a modern understanding, keeping that text and doctrine alive versus being something that's set in stone thousands of years ago. So I would say that there is some limitations here, and accusations of, being rewriting history. That's, you will get accused of that. And people will absolutely tell you that you're projecting your modern values onto something that is already set. And they'll say to you like, "Well, this isn't how it is. This is how it's always been." But a revisionist is always going to say, "Well, I don't care. I want to look closer and I want to know how it is now." And I want to be clear to everyone that this approach, revisionism, should be done on open practices. With that being said, it is my nature to analyze. And so even when I have read books on closed practices, my nature just it analyzes. It's what it does. And if that is what your nature does, even though I would never, give a revision to something that is a closed practice, doesn't mean that my brain's not doing it. And there comes a point where you need to realize what your instincts are and go with them, and not fight them and be comfortable with what that means, the backlash that you might get. Um, yeah. Okay. So shall we move into traditionalist? Okay, so traditionalists, their goal here again, like similar to a revivalist, it's about preservation. The thing is, though, the revivalist is trying to bring it back to the origin. A traditionalist is not going to bring it back. They're going to continue with where it is now. So they expect continuity. They expect the system, the order of the system to remain intact. They value structure. They want a hierarchy, and they also they want discipline within the practice. So if it's traditional, you will run into those things. Lots of consistency. I'm going to use that word a lot. And repetition. Repetition consistently. Yeah. The authority as a traditionalist will come from overseeing the tradition. What's that called? Stewardship.
yeah.
It will come from that. And also, I think the authority also might be in initiation. There's a lot of expectations of if you are going to become a traditionalist, then you need to traditionally approach it, and they expect that from other people. And there's benefits to traditionalism without a doubt. It brings stability to a practice, and it can bring depth. Some Solomonic practitioners that I know that practice like to the book, to the fucking word, they have a lot of depth, and they feel very stable in their practice. So stable, they'll just sit there and tell you that everybody else is wrong because they are sure that how they are practicing is the right way. There is no other way. That's what's interesting about traditionalists. So if you run into someone who's like, this is the only way, you cannot practice outside of this, they are a traditionalist. Or they have a traditionalist philosophy in their practice in some capacity. And so acknowledging that and knowing that will prevent you from fighting up against them and save you some breath and
Yeah.
energy. Lots of breath because you don't want to fight against a traditionalist, trust me. Um, because the nature of a traditionalist is to resist change. So you're trying to change their mind, you're literally putting your hand in the mouth of a wolf.
It's almost a reinforcement, actually, of
Yes,
traditionalism,
it
actually.
is. And you may also notice that a traditionalist, they're typically the ones that gatekeep the most because they don't think you deserve that information.
Well, yeah, because there's a hierarchy to the
Yes.
information.
Yes, there's a hierarchy to the information. You have not earned that information. You need to do blank, blank, blank. You need to go through the clip off. You need to be able to do this. You must be initiated to know this information. You're not good enough to know this information until you are, and you need to prove that. So traditionalists are not the ones that you want to argue with. Okay. Let's look at non-traditional nonconformist. So, a non-traditional nonconformist, their fucking goal, okay, is personal sovereignty and lived experience, gnosis. Their gnosis, their UPG is going to be pivotal, okay? And the approach completely rejects the idea of legitimacy must come from historical context. It must come from history. It must come from the lineage, must come from the folklore. That is the accuracy. They were all right back then, and we are all wrong now. That is not going to happen. That's not happening. If you are a non-traditional nonconformist, there's no fucking way that that's what you think. It completely rejects it. It's experimental, it's adaptive by nature, so you're constantly adapting, your practice is constantly changing and changing and changing. It's built on the back of intuition, not on the back of traditional text. And typically the systems within it. So if you were a non-traditional nonconformist and you were writing a book on ritual, you would be the one that would create it because you're the one that has direct contact and relationships with the divine. It would be based off of your lived experience, not something that you read. This is actually what happened to me when I was writing Lunchtime with Demons. I kept leaning into the original grimoires and I was like, why am I doing this? I am not a traditionalist. I don't know why I'm doing this. And I was scared of backlash. So I was doing it. And then I was like, what the fuck do I care about backlash? The amount of occultists that absolutely hate me, like, what the fuck do I care? I don't want to sit at their fucking tables.
Yeah.
I don't want to hang out with you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. And that made me really realize like I need to rewrite this book. And then I spilt Diet Coke on my laptop and completely lost the book anyway.
Just to give you no choice in the matter.
Yeah, Lucifer was like, well, that book's gone. Because
The
I have
irony
nothing.
that he used Diet Coke is not lost on me.
It's not lost on me either. Homie knows how much I love a Diet Coke. I love me a Diet Coke. Um, and so anyway, but the thing is though, I will say non-traditional nonconformists, they can blend traditions as well. They'll take multiple things and be like, but this together creates this, which works for me, you know? And it can be very, very creative. The authority here, it comes from how it feels in the body. So it's embodiment, how it feels in the person, how it feels in the body, and the outcome. Does the outcome work? So for me, I stopped practicing like physical traditional witchcraft. I practice manifestation witchcraft and like integration witchcraft, where I'm like talking to trees and then I'm like, I'm gonna bring in abundance this way. I'm a fucking weirdo, okay? But the outcome has been incredible. So the outcome being amazing means I'm now locked into this. I feel embodied by it. I feel empowered by it. And the outcome has worked for me. So now I'm going to respond to it. What's great about this is your practice feels alive, changing all the time, feels alive, feels responsive. It feels, honestly, like really unpredictable. Like super, super unfucking predictable, okay?
Yeah.
And I love it that way, but that's not for everybody. It gives me a lot of agency. It makes me feel like there's a lot of consent in my practice, and it also makes me feel like my practice is very authentic. If you can't tell that I'm a non-traditional nonconformist as well, hello, welcome to the party. Um, and to me, the reason why I'm a non-traditionalist nonconformist is because I do not believe that we should be gatekeeping. I think that this way and this type of practicing allows marginalized voices to exist in the space. And I am a huge advocate for that. I will be that way until the day I die, and I fucking refuse to not have my spiritual practice reflect that. And so I'll be damned if I change the way I practice because I'm not, okay? I want to just be super clear about all of this. You can study as a revivalist, okay? Because I'll be real, in my studies, in my world religion studies and my obsession over these years and my studies of like all of these pantheons, there is a part of me that is very revivalist in study. Like like I said, I would, if I was to go back to college, this is something that I would do. I would go to school for Assyriology, which would mean I would end up at archaeological digs in the Middle East. And so, as someone who studies academically, I have a lot of revivalist tendencies. I want to find all of the origin sources. I want to find the text. I want to touch it. I want it. I want it. I want it. I want to know it. I want to know the oral traditions. I want to know everything about it. But when I interpret it and I read it, I am a revisionist. I'm going to tear it apart. I'm going to completely allow it to exist within the modern world, within my world. And then as a nonconformist, I'm going to then literally only adopt parts of it that feel right and make me feel embodied and make me feel empowered. But here's the funny thing. If I do that and I create my own ritual, when it comes to that ritual, I am traditional. Even though I made the ritual, I will do it step by step, exactly how I said I would do it. My bindings are all handwritten out, sealed in wax and blood. They're all done on specific dates. I dot every fucking I, cross every T. I know the fine print between me and that divine being. So I can be very traditional in that way. So I wanted to say this because I want you to understand that a single practitioner can embody each one of these. But you have to like give space for the dominant philosophy of that practitioner.
Oh, completely. And I think that's the irony for me. Like my traditionalism kind of actually roots in, I think about shamans and
Mhm.
tra tribal culture before there was written documentation of practice and how that grew into what we now see in written. And to me, that growth and that place of how it grew into those things sets the foundation of how I think all magical practice should work.
Yeah. 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 I do hope that this is helpful for people. Um, I think it's funny because I have a lot of students, right? So I have a lot of students, I have a lot of clients, and one of the things I hear all the time is like, "Gosh, I just I've been on this person's TikTok and this person's TikTok, and they say one thing, and then somebody else says another thing, and everybody's saying different things. It's like, what the fuck do I believe?" And I'm like, babes, it's not who do I believe. It's not what do I believe. It's not what do I believe about the practice. It's what is my instinct on practice as a whole? How do
Yeah,
I
who are
want to
you?
approach it? Yeah, who are you? Because without that knowledge, like you're batting zero, babe. You're gonna get influenced so bad, you're not gonna know what's right, what's up, what's down. You could be upside down in an avalanche, and you'll have one person in your ear that's like, "You're upside down." And then the other person's like, "You aren't upside down, actually. Technically, you're 90 degrees to the left." And then you've got someone over here that's like, "I just think you're like in the snow, man. You're just there. And this is where you are, you know?" And then you have someone else who's like, "What is snow, though? Is snow
Yeah,
not just
no sounds
water?
real.
It's not real. So melt the snow." You know? And it's like, okay, guys, we're all coming from different perspectives, and it doesn't make one of us right and it doesn't make one of us wrong. But what's important is to be able to educate yourself on that frame of mind, the container in which the information is coming from. Because if you come to me, the truth of the matter is, you need to know the container in which everything I say is coming from. And it's always coming from a very similar philosophy. And so if you're expecting something else, if you're expecting a traditional approach, you're not going to get it from me
I think it's
ever.
helpful too to also explore this so that you also realize that you're not just solely one of these things.
Yep.
There are many parts and aspects, and like I was saying before, that I do think that that ebbs and flows as you grow and change in your practice as well. Like where you fall in those certain situations. I've seen people, start in these very nonconformist ways and find themselves in a very traditional format because of just the way that their practice grew and changed. So there's no one way that that will ebb and flow, but I think it is important to know that that does ebb and flow with you, especially if you can help kind of center yourself in your practice.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And it bums me out because like I'll see people that have such a beautiful intro to their practice, and they're really coming at it through a lens that makes them feel safe and comfortable, and then they run into the wrong person on TikTok that doesn't even recognize that they're trying to indoctrinate people with how they practice, and then they end up feeling terrible about themselves, and then they just want to stop doing it because they're like, well, clearly I'm doing it wrong, so there's no point in doing it at all.
Yeah,
Oh, the amount of times I've had to fight against that. It's brutal.
it happens. And I think it's only getting worse with the social media and interjection of people into our practices. Actually, that's one thing that I think about sometimes too, as we've talked about, like in our past. I spent 20 some plus years of my practice as a very solitary practitioner. And
Yeah,
I think that may be why also that I am very firm on who I am and where I'm going with my practice, because I've not had a lot of outside voices to necessarily influence where I was going.
100%. 100%. But the thing is, the reason why people are reaching for social media is because they they want we love external validation.
Oh yeah.
We just fucking love it. And It's the fear that they might be wrong. Excuse me.
I could promise you, you will be at some point. To
Yeah.
yourself, to the things you believe, and then setting even outside people out of it, you will feel wrong in where you've been, and the things that you've been told, and the things you've learned, and that's just growth.
Yeah. I mean, like, the other day actually one of my friends reached out to me and she was like, "Hey, do you have the video Azazel, the Lunchtime with Demons video for Azazel on your TikTok?" She's like, "I want to send it to my friend." And I was like, "Do you really want to send it in to her that?" I was like, I would prefer you don't. And then she was like, "Well, it's just I think it'd be really helpful." And I was like, "I don't. Do you want me to send you like a clip it from my book? Because like that might be helpful." And she's like, "Well, I don't think she wants to read anything. I think she wants she's like, your voice is really calming. I'd rather send her the video." And I was like, "Well, you're gonna have to wait because I got to make the new video." So I did. I that day I made an entirely new Lunchtime with Demons video featuring Azazel. And I I have openly said that all of my previous Lunchtime with Demons videos I do not agree with. I don't agree with them. I don't watch them. I I see them as a stepping stone in my practice and a point in which I have evolved from. And I'm grateful for that evolution. I'm never going to delete them. I'm not ever ashamed of my own evolution and my own growth. I don't have anything to fucking prove to you. Like, I am making mistakes all the time and learning from them. And it is that very thing that has shown me that I'm allowed to human without judgment, you know? And so it's like it doesn't matter what you're doing. Like, it doesn't matter if you've changed your mind or you don't see things that way. You don't have to run and hide it and sweep it under the rug. Let people see. Let people see your imperfections. Let people see the growth. I think that's the thing that teaches us to believe in ourselves, to teaches us to not seek that external validation,
I agree.
to not be so scared of being wrong, to just say, "Oh, well, I'm fucking wrong."
Yeah, so much of this is experiment. I think so much of what I
Mm.
rely on too is a bit of my chef background. And I think this is kind of one of those places where I think it really is fitting. So, you go to the restaurant and you see this magnificent plate that has been presented to you in all its perfection in, 10, 15 minutes. You didn't see the countless hours of each aspect of that, from the sauce to the way the meat
Mm.
was cooked to and not only the experimentation of getting it to that place, but the failure and loss of product and time that went into creating that one dish that you got that looks like perfection on the plate. Took
Hmm.
hours and hours of growth, and in not even counting what like technique and things you've learned ahead of time before you even stepped into the arena of creating this one dish.
Yeah. I like what you just said though, which is excuse me. Until you even stepped into the arena. You have stepped into the arena. That's the key. That's the key to this. You're in the arena. If you don't know what I'm talking about, who the fuck was it? Brene Brown? I don't care for her fully, but I watched one of her talks and she was talking about this where she was like, don't let people who aren't even in the arena tell you how to fucking fight for your life in that arena. If you're in there and somebody is in the stands watching, telling you you're not doing it right, don't listen. Do not listen. If someone's in that arena with you and they're like, bitch, I've been a gladiator here for 20 years, I'm telling you that lion's about to eat your fucking face. You know, that maybe listen. maybe listen, okay? But pay attention. Is the spectator telling you, or is the gladiator that's worked there 20 years telling you? That's survived, that's missing an arm. They've been through some shit, you know? They've seen some shit. Um, so it's like you were in that arena, and that's where you want to be when you're practicing. You want to be so caught up in your practice, so caught up in the discovery of who you are and what you're doing that other people become a secondary thought. Like they're not even, they have no power or authority over you. They're the ones that get to taste test your sauce. You know? Oh, I've been really, speaking of the arena, speaking of containers, this is a side quest of conversation, but I do think it aligns. Um, so maybe we can put like philosophies of practice and this as the title because I hit a wall recently with social media. After I did my binding, so everyone knows, I recently alchemized with Lord Satan after 3 years of kind of our relationship ebbing and flowing. We decided to make our relationship more permanent through covenant. And I'm very grateful for that. But there are changes that happen. If you listen to the frequency episode, you'll be more familiar with how those changes work, right? But one of the biggest changes for me is social media. I'm really like I was really struggling with it after that day. And then I went and talked to Satan about it and he put it into perspective for me of why it was bothering me so much. But like TikTok, for instance, is a good example. Like to me, that container as a priestess, me trying to teach something that is sacred, that container no longer holds what I have to say properly. And I refuse to allow it to be an authority. And so I've changed and shifted the way that I use it and the way that I speak on it to reclaim my sovereignty back from it. And it's just been fascinating. It's been fascinating. Like my approach to social media moving forward is definitely different. And that's all social media. Like all social media. And I do think too, like what also got me to this place was not just Satan, but it was also like our podcast has reminded me of like that I enjoy talking about this stuff. And when we are doing it here, the only edits that we ever do is like taking out coughs or if I have to pee, you know? Our edits are we don't re-record. We don't ever say like, "Oh, I said that weird. I'm gonna say that again." Like we don't do that. And half the time we don't even prep for our what we're talking about.
It's true. I love it actually a bit because, like I said, it really makes us like I think on the pulse of like our community.
It does. But that's the key. On the pulse. Alive.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
alive.
Makes these
And
conversations alive.
yes. And responding to a trending sound while removing the gaps between breaths because people don't have the attention span on TikTok to listen to something that's more than 30 seconds long and and actually enabling that behavior, I can't I'm not doing it anymore. You will sit down and watch my video if you want to watch it. You will give your system a chance, your nervous system a chance to regulate when you're with me because that's who I am and that's what Lucifer wants. I refuse to let the app decide that for me. So you get another dopamine hit for me? I don't want to be a dopamine hit from you. I don't want to. If that's what I was before, it's. It's not anymore. Somebody said, I love this new series that you're doing. It's not a series. It's not a series. This is moving forward. This is what you're gonna get. I am an educator and I take that very seriously. And as much as I am a performer as well, and as much as I love the art, art needs to reflect life. The rules of TikTok is not my fucking life. My life is filled with incredible things that I can give you and will give you freely on multiple medias like I do with the fucking Patreon and this podcast and YouTube, like, being able to see it. And I will stay on TikTok, but I'm not behaving that. I'm not doing that. That does not trump. Ugh, I hate that word. That is not that's not more important than what Lucifer
It's
wants.
not overarching.
Yeah. And so the thing is, I actually had someone reach out to me and say, I love your new videos. But when I come on to TikTok, I made a rule and I save your video, I doom scroll, and then I come back to your video, regulate my nervous system, and then I get off TikTok. And I was like, Whatever you got to do. Thank you for telling me." Honestly, hearing that, I was like, this is where we are. Like, it has a hold on us. It has a hold on us. It lets us doom scroll. It lets us numb ourselves from what's happening in our society. And I think I understand fully why we need that. Why we are searching for that. I mean, a woman just got murdered this week in Minneapolis by our own tyrannical fucking government. Like, what? We're I saw someone at a comment said it's not Gestapo. Why Gestapo shaped?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
like
When the
what
shoe fits.
when the shoe fits. This is a really trying time. We need to be really careful as psychics where and who we share our energy with and how much we give it. And I understand if you're going to be doom scrolling, I'm begging you, like, check your system. If your system is flailing around like a 7-year-old child, then you deserve more than that. You can have more than that. But especially when you are trying to grow your spiritual practice, especially.
Yeah.
And I refuse to enable that on that app. So when you're on there, if you run into my video, just know I'm not giving it to you anymore. I'm not. I can't do it. It just doesn't align with who I am as a teacher and the work that I've done and the commitments that I've made to the entities that I work with and the way that I want the world to shift and the way that I want consciousness to shift in the fucking world that I want my daughter to live in. I'm responsible in ways for that world. And I can't do it if I'm part of the problem. Like, if spirituality and the expansion of the self is what's going to heal this fucking world, like, it's our job to fight against what's happening. So when my voice comes in, I refuse to be the one to numb you. Although I think I got compared to Delilah the other day on the podcast as well. And that was a compliment. I'd like to say that because I listened to that growing up. Do you remember that? Do you
Yeah.
remember
Yeah, I
Delilah?
do remember Delilah.
Oh gosh, I loved Delilah. Like, I'd be in the back seat of my mom's car. She'd come on and I could listen to her and just fall asleep. She
Yeah.
regulated my nervous system as a little anxious kid. Little lonely anxious kid.
I'll date myself. It was Paul Harvey for me that I really liked a lot.
Oh, yeah. The radio.
Yeah, the video. Interesting, actually. I think that's a fun part of our age group is the world and the way that it's been used and changed so dramatically
Mhm.
is interesting.
It
But
is.
I think you're right, though. I think it gives us the ability to see that for what it is and
Hmm.
make a conscious decision to not join in the rat race, not be a part
Yeah.
of it, not, feed it.
Yeah. It's hard to do.
Yeah, I mean it's quick and easy to get swept up in it. I mean, and
Hmm.
that's why it's so effective, right?
Yeah. You know, it was like for years I was like, why is my counter broken? Like, how do I fix this fucking counter? And on my TikTok, and I was like, how do I get people to be engaged with their spiritual practice? Like, then I'd be like, well, you know what? Just make content you like. Just make content you like. And then I would make a video, and then I'd be like, do I like this video? I don't care. And I'd post it, and then I'd just think to myself, like, oh, that was fun to make, I guess. And then I would have these thoughts where I'm like, but is that my job? Is that what I signed up for with Lucifer? Like, to just make fun content? Like, I thought my job was to bring people to themselves, to who they want to be, to discover what their path looks like. And I don't know, I feel like I'm finally gonna push myself into alignment with that this year. And it feels good, but it's definitely intimidating without a doubt.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one aspect I like about like for myself with TikTok. I started with wanting to have my following count at 666 as kind of just a fun little nod in my bio. I've actually found that this curates my feed very well for me and people that genuinely I want to watch. And then I spend my time consciously commenting in people's videos to help further uplift them in what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's intention. It's how you approach something. Um, intention is not everything, but when it comes to something like this, like a beast like social media and the level of access that we have, it's not something that we are particularly accustomed to having. And I was actually talking about this last night with Garrett because if you don't know who Garrett is my husband. And he's pretty muggle, although he does work with Lilith and Hecate and so I guess no, he's not as muggle as I joke that he is. Um, but I was having this conversation with him last night because I was saying, historically speaking, someone who was acknowledged for their spiritual gifts per se, because we know how I feel about Claire abilities being called gifts. I don't like that. But they would provide for them. They would provide like a house and home, food, the um the what is it called? The town would take care of them. And then you would go to them and pay them, and then they would tell you, their life, your life, or what their wisdom. They would share their wisdom with you. And I was saying to Garrett, I was like, if this was back then, I would probably have scooped my eyes out. I'd be living in a hut, and then I would tell you like about your future, and then I would throw some water on some like burning bay leaves and incense, and then you'd be on your merry way. And I was like, but we hear those stories, and we're like, whoa, real seers. And I'm like, guys, we're doing the same shit. We're like, you hear these stories about Jesus and Muhammad and these different prophets. I have news for you. Like, do you think prophets just stopped existing? We're all still here. We just have the internet now. We're not like, I'm not crossing through the Middle East trying to get the word of God around. Like, I can just go on TikTok and make a video. I'm not calling myself a prophet, okay? Well, what I'm saying is these prophets received their titles because of the access that they had, which was unusual. And it was unusual because nobody would put themselves through that type of burden to have that much access. But when you look at Jesus, like he fought for that access. He had disciples that helped him. So he had a Patreon. He 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 made himself like social media. He went around, he spoke with everybody. He didn't judge who he spoke with. Um, I am one of those people that believes that he existed, at least as a man, because we have proof of taxes from at least historically speaking. We do have some proof of his physical existence. Maybe, sort of. It's arguable, but at least where I've landed is I'm sure he existed. Somebody had to exist in order to perpetuate this shit. And so, he if he was alive now, guess what? He would be on a backpack tour through the Middle East, talking about, his God. And we have people right now. There's a revisionist within Islam, right? You
Yeah.
you sent me him.
Yeah, he falls in a lot of categories actually,
He's
but
like a
he's
rev
foundationally in the yeah, Muslim.
but he's Muslim, and there's a lot of people that see him as a living prophet right now. Um,
He
and it's
introduced the reincarnation of Lao Tzu last week, so I was kind of interested in that.
interesting.
But
So
that's how
like,
like the spectrum for him and Hermetic teachings as well as is
mm,
in it. So
it's interesting because there's a lot of people that could be seen as being like if they were alive when Josh was around. Sorry, Yeshua, when if they were alive when he was around, and we had social media back then, they'd be in the same situation. If I was alive back then, I'd probably be in a hut somewhere telling people about the gods. Like it, it's not that it went away. It's that we teach in
wow.
different ways now. And we don't need to be called prophets because we're not doing something that is so completely like left field. This has become normal because we've evolved. It has evolved into normalcy. Speaking about a God, okay, like what Jesus did in regards to taking his God and saying, the Messiah, the Messiah you're literally waiting for is here. It's me. Like doing that, that's wild. Like no, like it's not crazy that he was crucified. And crucifixion was incredibly common. Incredibly common. That's why he was crucified with two others. That was like that was like honestly, like that was an easy way to kill people. Like it wasn't special. That cross wasn't special. Like this this was just they just saw him as a cuckoo banana and a nuisance and a loud nuisance. And they wanted to get rid of him, which is fucked. Okay, it is the dogs. I don't know if you can hear them. Probably not. I once did a podcast episode where like the dogs are barking, and then Caroline edited it and took out the dogs, so it just makes me sound like a crazy person. It's on a Morbid Monday.
I love that.
So Ryan, don't do that.
I actually am really good. If you bring up sounds, I'm like, okay, that gets to stay.
Hold on, let's
No,
let the dogs do their thing for a second.
I
Uh,
I do think it's interesting though to think about those aspects of where, and I have a very somewhat similar belief in that I do believe it was an actual person, and I do think that he was killed in the spectacle that was Rome.
mhm.
Honestly, they were very much in controlling the narrative of everything in their kingdom,
Yeah.
and I think he just fell into that. He was also somebody that was very political. He was
Yes.
political not only against the Romans, but also about Jewish practices at the time that
Yeah.
were non-traditional in his mind.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep.
So I do like to think about how much of probably a bit of an anarchist he'd probably be considered today if he was here.
It's interesting, right? Because I'm like, okay, like I go back and forth on this, and maybe we should do a whole episode on our perspective on this of like whether or not he was liberal. Because some of the arguments that he himself makes in biblical text, although do we even know who wrote it? Um, some of the arguments he makes is rather traditional and revivalist of him,
Same
where
time.
he's like, "This isn't right. You're not doing this right." So like he's like an accusatory revivalist and traditionalist while also being a revisionist. But like, so like I think that like this is honestly why this conversation was important to begin with, was acknowledging the philosophies of practice and how and where you land, you know? Like I think of the
Completely. And no matter
yeah.
what your practice is, whether it be Christian, Muslim, Jewish, magic,
Mhm.
demonolatry, these all kind of apply in some aspect of that work.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Um, but yeah, I think I also yeah, I do think even as a mentor, I try to tell my students before they even I do is so if you mentor with me, you and I have to meet on the phone and chat before I accept you as a student because I need to make sure you're comfortable with the fact that I am a revisionist and non-traditional, non-conformist. 100% as in practice in action. Academically, I'm a revivalist and I have traditional tendencies. And those are things that I need to articulate with you. I need you to understand before you start mentorship with me, because that may be a complete, like, selling point for someone, but it might also be, a solid no for someone else. And so when we can know how to articulate not just who we work with, we love talking about who we work with, but how we work with them, like the paths of working, the pathways that I explained, but also how we philosophically see the container in which we work, the philosophy of it. Then we can start having conversations that are more open and less judgmental towards each other.
Completely. I think it really helps that conversation to be had amongst people to have these kind of like foundational just understandings. And like I said, the spectrum of that, of that work, because it
Mhm.
is a spectrum of those things, not just one.
Yeah,
I would be
absolutely.
more surprised if anybody ever just landed in one.
Yeah,
I would consider almost like the unicorn of it.
yeah, absolutely. Um, well, I love this conversation. Thank you, Ryan, for being you. And our next conversations, we're going to do an episode completely on Lucifer because, duh. And then we're also going to do an episode on another sort of continuation episode of more taboo topics within the occult and deity work. And you can also check out my TikTok now that I have shifted how I teach. So what I'm going to do today is post a video on this as well. So you can save the video on that will probably be about a 10-minute video. So you can save that. And then also you'll have this episode, which is me and Ryan going into it in depth. So I'm going to try to do conjoining topics in both platforms. So you have more of like a condensed version and then a larger version where we can kind of elaborate on some of these things. Hopefully that makes it easier for you to go back and forth and reference. Let's see. Oh my gosh, can I tell you what the word of the day is?
Yes, please.
Okay. I literally am laughing because I opened my vocabulary app and it literally it's
I couldn't hear it.
omniscience.
Oh, omniscience.
I don't know if you could. It's omniscience. Okay, so omniscience is knowing everything. In stories, gods often have this. They often have omniscience or omniscience. Depends on how, if you have a British accent or not. Um, so yeah, knowing everything. God, we should have a conversation about that.
That actually is probably a fun episode on its own, yeah.
Yes, on like omniscience, on omnipotence, understanding like how the gods see and what they know, and if they know everything, are they perceiving you? Let's do it.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, we'll definitely put that in the list
That's a good
of
one.
potential topics. Yes.
Well, it's a good topic. All
And
right.
as always, too, folks, please feel free to have these conversations in our Patreon chat, to talk more about it, questions. Definitely.
Please. We love that. We love when we see that you're, taking the conversation to a place where people can actually share their feelings and thoughts on it. So please do that. Um, and hopefully you enjoyed. I talk with my hands a lot, hanging
I
out with
talk so
us.
much with my hands. You're gonna definitely notice that about both of us.
Yeah.
We're both animated.
Very animated, too animated sometimes. Well, honestly, that's why I was like, we should start posting the videos because I think they can hear us, but they can't see us get so like, "Ah!" You can see us getting all excited and crazy, and the craziness that is the background noise in my house. Like sometimes it's Juniper or the dogs or whatever, you know. So
It happens. We're
yeah,
not trying to be fussy.
no. We love you a lot. Stay safe out there. Don't let people rattle you right now. Protect your energy, and we'll see you in a week.
See you next week.
Ryan, I have to tell you a secret. Don't tell anyone on the podcast.
Just us.
Just kidding.